Howdy there, folks. It's Geist with some more Destiny 2. And today I'm going to be doing an in-depth video on the Grasp of Avarice dungeon and how anybody on any class can solo flawless it fairly easily. Now, a lot of the other guides that you're going to see out there, they typically will just kind of do, like a couple pointers here and there for each encounter. And I'm going to try to go through each part individually as best I can. I did shorten the video a good bit so it wouldn't be overly long. But basically, I'm just going to try to give as many tips and pointers that I can give you that I found while I was going through trying to do this, and it's just going to help you guys get it done a lot easier. And even if you're not going for the solo flawless necessarily, you could just use this in general to solo the dungeon because it is some good loot and it's a good way to farm some high stat rolls. So for this first encounter, you're just going to kill as many of the adds as possible right here in front of the loot cave. You're going to collect the orbs, and then you're going to go and stand next to the crystal inside the cave to deposit them. In order to get this completed, you need at least 50. I tend to just get all 50 at once. And every time you collect 10 of them, you're going to get your super back. And this is going to apply for the entirety of this dungeon. Hunters, you're going to be using your tether, specifically Deadfall. Titans, you're going to be using your bubble. Warlocks, you're going to want to use your Well of Radiance. And you're just going to keep firing it over and over at that spot that I just showed you. Titans and Warlocks, you'll plant yours in about the same spot. And just use that to kill as many of the adds as you can until you get to about 50 stacks. Now do be careful, of course, throughout this entire dungeon because there is a timer whenever you're picking up these burdens. And of course, if you let it get to 0, it will kill you, which will of course end your run. You want to be careful not to ever pick up any stray orbs. I can't tell you the number of times I didn't notice that I had run over one when I was finished doing whatever objective and it ended up killing me. There are a few areas in here that do have sort of a red tint to them too, and they'll kind of scare you a little bit because you'll think you've got a burden. But once you get all 50, you're just going to go through this spot right here and stand next to the crystal. Beware of the wizards. Sometimes they will come in here with you, but you should be able to just run in here and then drop right down. Now you'll drop through and you're going to walk right through this way. And first thing coming up, you want to use your primary to do a little bit of damage to the Shrieker to get it to pop open, and I usually just sleeper it. And the same thing for the Knight across the way. Kill the Acolytes right here. And for this next group of enemies there, it's kind of optional. You can wipe out all of them if you want to, but you don't necessarily have to. Oh, and another thing, as you just saw me swap there, Hunters, make sure to have on your triple jump. Warlocks and Titans, you're going to want to have on your strafe variants of your jumps. So the strafe lift and the strafe glide. And you can or cannot kill all the adds here, doesn't really matter. The one thing you want to pay attention to, there's a group of thralls that's going to come down the hallway over to the right. Once they start to funnel out, you can run past them. When you see the first few thralls like these, you can run. Typically that exploder thrall will not blow up on you unless he's all the way out of the tunnel. I've run past him numerous times and he hasn't blown up. Now Hunters, you're going to have a big advantage pretty much during this entire thing just because of your stealth capabilities, especially with Void 3.0 now. We can stealth like crazy. So you can use that a lot for survivability and just getting out of sticky situations. Warlocks and Titans, you're going to have to kind of rely on your rifts and your shields. You'll come to this first area. This is the first of the traps. You'll open the door on the left. Always get up on the tables to the right here. You can actually open that one without dropping off the table, but I dropped off right there, and just go right back the way you came. Be careful not to bonk your head on that pipe and fall on the trap. I've done that numerous times. And another thing I like to do whenever you're running through all this part, I like to have on a lightweight weapon as it just makes it a little bit easier. And of course, high mobility doesn't hurt either. As a hunter, I wear the Stompies. For the other two classes, you'll do just fine with a lightweight weapon. And for this part, you'll jump in the far right one. And you don't have to necessarily fly through it like this. I've just done it a few times so I can kind of speed run it. You don't have to follow this exact path. Whatever way you need to get through it, that'll keep you from dying to the traps. Now, I skip a lot of this part every single time, and you can successfully do this on the Warlock and the Titan. I know it looks like you won't be able to make this jump, but if you're using your strafe jumps, Warlocks and Titans, and using a lightweight weapon, you should have no problem getting across that big chasm like I just did. Hunters, of course, you'll use your triple jump, as well as a lightweight weapon and Stompies. And right here you can sleeper the Shrieker right through the fence. And then you just clear the adds on both sides. Now, I just happen to be running dual primaries, but for this part of it, it is actually a little bit better to have something like a fusion or shotgun to help clear these guys just a little bit quicker. But if you have something like I do, which is I have a Vorpal Farewell, that does just fine for me. And if you do have more sleeper ammo, it's good to eliminate the knight across the way for this next part, but I did not have any, so I just had to use the bow. Which, of course, he ran. Same thing here. It looks like you can't make it, but you can. You just want to make sure you jump right on the corner of the platform there. Or jump off of the corner of the platform, I should say. And that's it for the little chasm area. And now on to the next room. Kill these dregs that spawn as soon as you come through the door. There's going to be a wizard right to the right after these guys. Again, sleeper or fusion is great here. Cartesian coordinate is actually really good because of the solar damage. That way you can just kind of pop the wizard in one hit. Or 2 hits with Cartesian, 1 hit with sleeper. First lever is right on the right past that wizard right here. And I kind of just run in a circuit around the room using these little hidden platforms here. But you don't have to do that. You can also jump through the middle if you're worried about it being a little too risky jumping on these platforms. Don't forget about the secret chest right here. Now, Warlocks and Titans, you may want to actually jump in the middle and take your time a little more with this. Or pop your rifts and your shields. Titans, maybe not so much with the shield. It's not going to protect you from everything in there. But obviously Hunters, you can kind of just stealth through this whole thing. So it's a little bit quicker for us. Warlocks and Titans, you may want to sit in the middle and clear the adds. It'll take you just a little bit longer. But that's the #1 thing about this dungeon. It will take you a while. My first successful run took me about an hour and a half. And this was on the solo flawless. And this was after a few attempts. And you just don't want to take it too quick. Especially when it comes to the boss rooms. Do not be afraid to have to take an extra damage phase. Don't do anything too risky. It's tedious, but if you're patient, you can get through it. And see, here again, special weapon would be great for dealing with this guy a little bit quicker, but because I'm stubborn, I didn't do that. Now, when you're aiming the Scorch cannon, at a distance it shoots just a little bit below the center of the reticle, and then when you're shooting something that's up close, it's a bit above the center of the reticle. And you should see that. You're going to see me shoot this thing a billion times, so just pay attention kind of to where I'm aiming and you'll see. Also, as well, when it comes to shooting those little devices there with the Scorch, and right here, remember to get into the second nook, so that you don't get rolled over there. When you're using the Scorch cannon, you can also shoot it on the ground in front of those little devices, and it will also trigger it. I like to hang on to the Scorch cannon for this part after you get the first one here, and I just carry it with me all the way into the Ogre's boss room. Be careful of this little jump right here. As you're going to see, I almost tripped over some geometry there and then fell. But also, your feet will sometimes... It's got a bit of a slant to it, so your feet will come off the ground and you might accidentally use a jump, or if you're a warlock, you'll just glide down and die. So again, I like to bring the Scorch cannon with me. This lets you skip the first little part. If you don't bring the Scorch cannon, just kill the Fallen in the back. They're on that little catwalk, and get the Scorch cannon from them. And you're going to want to pay close attention to the paths that I take, because those are the least likely to get you shot by the Ogre. And always remember, of course, to fully charge it up to the 3rd tier when you're doing the explosion, because that will open the door. Unless, of course, you miss, like I just did, in which case the door won't open. This little area that I'm standing right here, you're going to spend a lot of time right here. This is the under the catwalk area, and I'm going to reference that again in just a little bit. So just remember that that's one of the safest places to be. So for this room, hunters, fire your tether, warlocks and titans, well and bubble, and then just go to town on the guys in here. Pick up all the orbs. Make sure not to let that Scorch cannon despawn, so you're going to want to grab that again. And then drop it and deal with this little group of acolytes here. Now, in the future, after you do this room, we're going to call this the left room. When you finish this first room on the left, and of course follow this path exactly, when you get to this crystal, it's always best to crouch behind it so the boss can't shoot you. You can use your guns. Sometimes I'll even use the Scorch cannon to kind of blow up the thralls as they're coming at me. And then always run to the left just like this, because that's the best way to avoid him. And just as an example, I didn't turn myself invisible so that you see that other classes can get through that just fine. Now, as I was about to say, during every damage phase after your initial one, when you don't have full ammo from the flag and you don't have full super, you can chill over there underneath the catwalk and just kill the fallen over and over and over, and the thralls over and over and over, in order to help get yourself some more heavy ammo, and also to help generate your super. If you're not confident, you can take out that first room without your super. Obviously, after that, it's not too big of a deal, because every 10 orbs that you pick up is going to give you your super right back. And I didn't mention this yet, but I am using Lament pretty much for the entirety of this. Sleeper was just for the first little bit to help deal with some yellow bar adds at a distance. And if you're a hunter, you can have ease of doing this by just turning invisible. I try to usually leave just a few of these adds alive. And the reason for that is just because it makes the tether last a little longer, because the thralls will run up and they'll die into the tether and make it last just a little bit longer. Now the combo that you're going to want to use on the Ogre when you run up with Lament, you're going to run up, hold the left trigger to charge, you're going to swipe 4 times with the right bumper, and then once with the heavy trigger to do the finishing blow. After that, it's going to be 4 regular swipes. So hold left trigger, light attack 4 times, then heavy attack, and then swipe 4 times. Every time after that last strike, or after that first strike, you're just going to do 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 heavy, 1, 2, 3, 4, and after that it's 1, 2, 3 heavy, 1, 2, 3, 4. For this part, this is going to be where a lot of your runs tend to end. It can be very frustrating, but if you just follow the exact path that I show you here, that does make it a little bit easier. Now, I actually messed up here and missed that. What you're going to want to do, and what I just demonstrate what not to do, whenever you go to these things to defuse them, you're going to want to drive straight through the center of the mine, and it should defuse as you're passing through it. You don't have to get off your Sparrow in order to do this. Now, for this part right here, get off your Sparrow. Throw a grenade, use a weapon, whatever you got to do to deal with these dregs, or just turn invisible like I do. Get back on your Sparrow and then drive through. That one little group right there is really good at killing you and blowing up your Sparrow. Now, of course, I'm using the exotic raid Sparrow for this, which does make it easier because it's significantly faster, but you can do it using any other Sparrow. I've done so multiple times by taking this exact path, and this exact path has been the most successful for me compared to the others that I've tried. For this last little turn right here, kind of hug the left side, and then if you need to, if the dregs get out in front of you, just drive straight at them. Whenever you encounter the dregs, it's always good to drive straight through them. Jump off here, get that last one. I typically throw a nade, and then just stand in there, and then that's it. Now, of course, thanks to the faster Sparrow, it did give me a little room for error with my mess up there at the beginning, but typically, as long as you drive straight through the mines, you'll defuse them just fine. And then after that, you'll just follow this path that I'm taking here to go through the crystals. Oh, and there is actually another hidden chest. I forgot to grab it here, but it is in the left eye socket of the skull. If you're standing inside the skull, you can climb up, and in its left eye, there is another chest there. Now, this next part is what I would say is probably the easiest part of the dungeon. It takes a little bit of time, and it's a little bit obnoxious, but if you'll just follow one very important tip that I'm going to tell you, then you shouldn't have any problems with it. And that is, whenever you're using these lifts, sometimes the lifts can get a little bit wonky. You want to make sure that you're always standing directly in the center of the lift when you fire yourself. Because if you're not, sometimes you'll kind of bounce around the rim of the lift there, and it might not shoot you the right way. You might lose all your momentum, and then you're just stuck halfway in the air and you fall to your death. Or in the case of the final one, when you're shooting yourself up into the boss room, if you're not standing directly in the middle of it, it has a tendency sometimes to fire you straight up and you'll hit the ledge and it'll kill you. And so basically just for this part, if you haven't done it before, all you're going to do is you're going to look around for these little servitors. You can kind of see them over there on the right. And you're just going to make your way to each encampment with the servitor. You'll kill all the adds until you get exactly 20 orbs. 20 is what you need, and you'll stand at the crystals, and that will take the shield off of the servitor, and then you can kill the servitor. And whenever you're adjusting these cannons, remember that they always have 3 positions. Left, middle, and right. Right sends you to whatever platform is to the right, left to whatever platform is to the left, and whatever the middle position is going to fire the cannonballs right at the ship there. And for these, whenever you're shooting these, you don't have to bring it to a full charge. Any charge will do. Just hold it long enough for you to get in there, or if you're shooting the cannonball, you can just shoot it straight at it. Now for this part, I typically will use my super as much as I can, as many times as I get it, and I like to use Lament. And the reason for that, of course, is just because Lament heals you. You can kind of run around just light attacking over and over. You don't really need to use your heavy attacks. And you can easily take everything out that way. But of course, fusions, shotguns, sidearms, auto rifles, SMGs, also all really good options. Titans and Warlocks have a little bit easier part here, just when we're talking about their super, because the bubble and the well are incredibly effective at wiping out all the adds. But of course, hunters, don't be afraid to use your stealth to keep yourself alive. This is really not a difficult part. You just have to not do anything silly. You know, watch your health. And then once you get to 20, again, it is 20. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but when you're fighting the Ogre, you need exactly 25 per damage phase. So it's 50 for that first crystal to get in here, 25 for each of the Ogre, and now 20 for each of this. When it comes to the final boss, it's 60. So one more time, the first opening door is going to be 50 orbs. The Ogre is going to be 25 for damage phase. This one's going to be 20 per cannonball phase, and the final boss is 60 per damage phase. And be careful when you're pushing that cannonball. It does have a tendency to roll off the cliff. It won't end your run, but you will have to do an extra cannonball shot. And just always make sure that it's positioned in the middle so that it shoots. And you'll have to do this 4 times total. Now once you've done this 4 times, the final boss will open, and you can shoot yourself into the center. Whenever you've successfully shot 4 of them, the little lifts here will always point themselves straight to the center, so you can just go ahead and launch yourself. And as I said before, especially on this last cannon here, please be careful and make sure you stand directly in the center, because if you don't, it can kind of launch you up into the platform up above and it'll kill you. Now for the final boss here, there's several bits to this, so I'll just kind of try to explain everything I can remember as I go. Typically, I like to use anything with Vorpal, and I will run double primary, something long range and something close range. For this, I'm using a Point of the Stag and a Crate auto rifle, although the 7th Seraph auto rifle is also really good, and the reason for that is because they both roll Vorpal. I actually got the same roll on both of mine, and I got auto-loading and Vorpal, which is very good for any kind of PvE content, because you can always swap to it. So the first thing you want to do whenever you come into the boss room, all the enemies are going to spawn. You're going to go right here behind this little pod in the back. That's where I always hide. It's typically the safest spot in the boss room. Watch out for the Scorcher Vandal. He's going to just keep kind of running around, but you can just shoot him and kill him and just leave the Scorch Cannon. It'll stay there for pretty much the whole time while you're doing this next bit. Now the first one you're going to want to try to kill is going to be the Shank, because he's a lot deadlier of the 2 yellow bar adds that are next to the boss. But first and foremost, you want to clear these dregs on the left, because they will keep grenading you the entire time. And as you're going, of course, don't be afraid to pick up some of the heavy ammo too. But it's a little bit easier to farm it in this part than it is with the Ogre, so you shouldn't run out too much. And same as with the Ogre, you want to have at least 40 in your Lament before you go to damage the boss. And so for the Shank, the reason I like to use a bow here is because it's got a lot of burst damage. Of course, put major spec on it. Anything with Vorpal is great. And you can kind of just keep peak shotting him until he's dead. And they do take a while. They're quite meaty. And periodically, of course, the boss is going to shoot those little mines at you. I just swapped to my little auto-loading auto rifle. That's a mouthful. And just gun them down before they can blow up. And as obnoxiously healthy as these guys are, remember, if you don't have on Vorpal and Major spec, they take significantly longer to kill. And it's not worth it to try to sit there with special ammo because you're going to run out of special ammo on them. For this next guy, the little dude that's next to the boss, I like to use my Vorpal auto rifle and strafe back and forth on top of this little structure of the pod. And typically that allows you to dodge most of the bullets. Now, of course, Warlocks, you can throw down a rift on this part to help heal you a little bit. Also, for this part, you want to wipe out the dregs on the right because they will throw grenades in when you're on top of the pod. And it's the same as with the Shank. You just kind of slowly whittle them down. Now, this guy's a little bit quicker to kill. Part of it's just because he's a little bit closer, so you can kind of DPS him more effectively with something like a Vorpal auto rifle. But I think in general, the Shank is a little bit tougher too. Alright, now once those two really tough guys are down, they're going to drop, make sure you kill the Shank first because the second dude, the little Vandal dude, is going to drop 10 of those orbs. You're going to immediately grab those and run center and deposit them. Hunters, of course, use your stealth. Other classes, just kind of be careful with the boss. If you have to and he gets close enough to you to stomp, you can hold up Lament to block a little bit and it should help you survive. And then for this final bit, as I said earlier, you're going to have to collect 60 total. The pattern that I typically like to do is 10, 20, 20, 10. So I've already deposited 10 on that first little bit after killing the Vandal dude. So then right here, you're going to bring this up to full charge. You're going to let it detonate. And the orbs are going to drop down. And I missed them this time around. But typically there's 10 on the right side, 10 on the left, and 10 in the middle. Do not be afraid to super this group of ads down here in the middle because they are jerks. And of course nade them a bunch as well. And if you don't get the exact pattern that I said earlier, the 10, 20, 20, 10, that's okay. The reason that I like to break it up into those, you're going to deposit the first 10 anyways. 20 and 20 after that is just a nice even number. And the reason I like to do 10 again at the end and not do, say, something like a bunch of 15s is because you want to minimize the number that you have to deposit on the last little bit, because you don't want to be in the crystal too long with the boss. And also, if you get too many, this is why you want to keep track of this part. You want to try to count as best you can and keep track of how many you've deposited total. Let's say when you get to the final deposit and you're going to damage the boss, you only needed to put in 10, but instead you've got 20 with you. Well, you've got to wait for all 20 of those to go in there, and that's wasted time to get on the boss in DPS. So typically 10 is the number that I'll go for, and if you're able to do the 10, 20, 20, 10, then it comes out perfectly, because of course it'll end, or you'll deposit the last one, and then you'll have plenty of time to get over to the boss. For this little center bit here, whenever you have to run in and deposit these, hunters of course abuse your stealth, warlocks and titans shield and bubble, and just try to keep the crystal between you and the boss. That's the best you can do. And along the way, clear out as many dregs as you can, because of course that's less grenades getting thrown your way. Now, when you do get to do the DPS on the boss, just remember this, the same exact pattern that I said before. Whenever you're fighting the ogre, you're going to hold down the left trigger or charge up the block. I'll be friendly to you PC people as well. You're going to charge up the block, light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack. So 4 light attacks followed by a heavy, which is a large burst. After that, you will do 4 regular light attacks, then hold the block again, and then 3 light attacks, 1 heavy. And you're just going to continue that pattern over and over. And that's typically what I find to be the best sustained DPS. Now, other people might swing 3 or 5 times. I like to swing 4 times because swinging 5 times is just too many on the in-between when you're not holding the block. And it's just to help maximize the damage a little bit more. And not to mention, when you're coming off of the 4th light attack and then go to charge, your character will typically instantly charge it. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. They say that you want to try to end it on a swing where your character had swung the sword going to the right. That way you can block very quickly and continue the DPS a little bit quicker. But if you follow the exact pattern that I said, you should do just fine. And here we go, the boss is in the middle again. And you'll do the exact pattern that I just talked about a second ago. And before you know it, he's dead. And congratulations, you've done it. There's your solo flawless. Now, one other tidbit of information I forgot to mention: on the in-between phases, if you don't have any burdens on you, you can go hide behind that pod just to kind of take a breather. And if you do manage to succeed, then you'll get this cool little emblem here just to showcase that you've done it, and you can show off to all your friends that you did a solo flawless dungeon. But anyways, folks, I hope you found this guide helpful. If you do, please leave me a like. And as always, thanks for watching, folks, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.